the goal.
Yeah, and you mentioned the two sort of controversial chapters, Paul Crawford and then
Yeah.
Peterson and Hamad's contributions.
Yeah.
What were the most controversial aspects of maybe the Peters Hamad article particularly?
Oh, well, I don't know specifically of any complaints that were directed at me about that chapter, but the reason I would say it's among the most controversial is because it flies in the face of so much of what's said in the broader Islamic world. I was going to say the Arab world. You often hear the Arab street and so on, but really within the Turkish world as well, and so on.
Well, even Indonesia actually has developed stories about the Crusades that reflect some of these ideas.
No, absolutely. And so when you have Western Crusade historians saying that this narrative is wrong, and by the way, I should mention that this narrative of victimization, is one that many scholars have embraced. Whether we're talking about Al-Azhar University in Egypt, one of the oldest seats of learning, higher learning in the Islamic world, dating back to the 10th century, something like that, or even modern scholars, at prestigious universities. Many have embraced this, and so here you have Ed Peters and Mona Hamad that are saying, no, this is all invented. This is late 19th, early 20th century. It's sort of a new history in that sense. Well, what's concerning about that is that it's that same history that the radical groups like Al-Qaeda, ISIS, Al-Shabaab in Africa, they embrace that history, that language, that rhetoric. I read an interview once with Osama bin Laden, and it was a short, maybe 2 pages if you printed it out, and there was something like 14 references to Westerners as crusaders. And so this is a dangerous narrative in that sense, in that it's used to recruit and to foster animosity towards the West. But on top of it, it's a false narrative, which is all the more distressing in that, in the post 9/11 world, in the age of the war on terror, right, and these kind of conflicts. You're seeing these narratives perpetuated. And so in a way, some of these chapters are meant to respond to that. But of course, we have far less controversial chapters on Templars and Children's Crusade and so on. But we do want to touch on some of these things. I mean, this book could have had 30 myths, but we had to narrow it down somehow. So
given some of these false narratives that have developed over time, do you think that gives historians a particular responsibility or a particular role to play in addressing them?
A moral responsibility. I still view myself as much as humanly possible, and I know there are critics of this, as Ronchian in my view, and anyone who's studied history knows that I'm referring to von Ranke, this great German historiographical figure, in that I think we should write history quote unquote, as it was, at least so much as the sources will allow us, so much as our own biases will allow us. We should try to control for them as best we can. And so I'm not very much into, so the thing is, like, if we talk about activist history, I don't know if that's so much the direction I want to go with this. What I want to do is write history as it was, as much as possible, as much as sources and our own implicit biases will allow, to be careful. But then once we've produced that narrative, most historians stand back. We're not responsible with what others do with it. And there are others who will take these narratives and use them for modern political purposes of all stripes, which we won't get into, but of all stripes. And but in the case of when we talk about Islamic extremism, since this was something that I've been called to comment on publicly, I was sort of forced, to bring in my historical background. As a Crusade historian, I was once invited to give an interview for local media, and I was supposed to give some historical background. And that snowballed into nearly 50, local interviews where the conversation could cover anything, and I quickly realized, but I did have that historical background as a base for commentary and for discussion, and so in that sense, I started, worrying about the production of history and how it's used. I don't know. I mean, I'd have to think about this more. It's a good question.
Well, it's a big.
It is a big topic.
It's a big question and a kind of a